chapter 13, if you would. Yeah, if somebody took my Bible. Yours needed it more than I did. Welcome to heaven. John chapter 13, if you're using the Pew Bibles, the TNIV is page 738. That'll be for most of you. There are a few odd copies of NIV out there. But today I want to talk about the power of symbols. What are symbols? What do they do? How do they function? And how do they shape us? Because we all get it. We locate ourselves somewhere, and at some point in time in our lives become defined by some sort of symbol. They say things often a lot more simply and more profoundly than words can. What may take us 100 words or more to explain or clarify or make sure we hedge ourselves correctly, we can sum up with just a symbol. As the old saying goes, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So call them what you want. Pictures, logos, symbols, we all know what they mean. Here are some examples, and let's see if you would want to define yourselves by these symbols. So let's start first with an image of hard work. Right? That's something I think we all take pride in. We're being defined by our ability to outwork those around us. It's our hallmark characteristic. We can outlast, we can outwork anyone. Between the early mornings and the long nights and the sweat on our brow, we know what it means to be defined by our work ethic. You pride yourself on it. So if that's you, if you think, I'm a good hard worker, I think he's talking about me, I've got some symbols for you. In fact, one person wrote about it this way. We disdain to conceal the views and the existing social concern. So let the ruling classes tremble at the coming revolution of hard work. The hard workers have nothing to lose but their chains, and we will throw them off. They have a world to win. All working men of all countries, unite. Sounds like a good proclamation, doesn't it? We're a good, hard-working class. Let's throw off our chains and let's embrace that. Well, that's a slightly amended reading of Karl Marx's book, The Communist Manifesto, and the symbols are the hammer and the sickle. Well, now all of a sudden we're a little less sure of defining ourselves by that. So I've got another one. Don't worry if that one upset you. So let's look at this symbol that comes from an ancient civilization as a sign of blessing. It literally means, if you were to take this word, which I'll give you in a minute, it means it is good. It has been used both culturally and religiously for thousands of years. It is written on the doorposts of buildings or of a house. It's been used in ceremonies to worship and connect with God, and culturally to promote goodwill between people. Sounds intriguing, doesn't it? Who doesn't want to be a part of something like that? Who doesn't want extra special access to God? So, who wants to be signed up? Who wants to be defined by that symbol? Well, let me tell you that symbol's name is a Hakenkreuz in German. You probably know it as the swastika. And now, all of a sudden, something that originally was meant to mean blessing, it is good, we don't like so much, we don't want to define us. Suddenly, we're a little bit more leery about this supposed good luck symbol. I don't want to be defined by that. Sometimes those symbols are more subtle in our daily life. So let me tell you a brief little story. I've just made this story up. But see if you can identify the symbols. If I tell you I'm hungry and want to have lunch at the Golden Arches. McDonald's, great, you know where I'm eating. My wife loves to shop at the Bullseye. Target, yes. My shoes with the swoosh make me run faster. Nike. My favorite comedian is on the Peacock channel. NBC. And both my phone and my computer are a type of edible fruit. Apple. Our lives become defined by symbols. Sometimes in good ways, sometimes in bad ways, but we all identify with something. Some of you, if I tell you my favorite soda is red and blue with a circle, you know I'm craving a Pepsi. We get how symbols work on our daily life. Our favorite teams are often symbolic in that way as well. If you care about Denver sports and what happened this last year, you're a Bronco fan. If you don't, you're from another part of our rivals, you're a donkey. Right? We change the symbol and the metaphor to suit us. In fact, you probably define yourself that way. You don't say you're a Seattle, you say you're a Seahawk. You're not an Ohio State, you're a Buckeye. We define ourselves by symbols in our daily lives, whether we're aware of it or not. Symbols shape and form us. They change the way we interact with people around us. Oh, hey, you like that product too? We instantly have something in common. Revolutions have begun on the power of a symbol. Tyrants have been overthrown, governments have been established, and peoples have rallied around a cause. Ideas have taken shape because a symbol grabs the hearts and minds of the people. Symbols, images, pictures, they all have the power to shape our imagination, to tell a story, to find a cause, or to unite us. As we are well aware, especially in light of some of the above examples, these motives, desires, and stories can often go awry. We like being defined by a good hard work ethic, as long as we don't associate with those people or with that image. Because they can be manipulative. We can use them to coerce others to do our own will. They can be destructive. The swastika is currently illegal in Germany to display, and for good reason. So we get, sometimes symbols unite us for a good cause. And sometimes they unite us towards destruction. In John 13, I think we get the symbol of what kingdom living looks like. That if you were to know most basically what a life with God looks like and you need a symbol to rally around, Jesus gives us that in the Gospel of John. We don't identify with a hammer and sickle or with the swastika or even a bald eagle or the American flag. Our symbol from Jesus is the basin and the towel. We define ourselves as citizens of God's kingdom by our service towards others. The lost, the hurting, the broken, and even in John when Jesus washes Judas' feet, the betrayer in our midst. Jesus grabbed the towel and basin at the Last Supper, the tools of a slave, and he used them to define his kingdom. But if you were a slave in someone's household, the most meaningless grunt job, the one that everybody tried to avoid, was the one of foot washing. He bathed the feet of his disciples, his followers, and all of their stinky toe jammy goodness. He knelt down and said, "This is what I do for you." John chapter 13. It was just before the Passover festival. And Jesus knew that the hour would come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things in his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the table, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." Peter, that's not what good kings do. Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." Then Simon Peter replied, "Not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Jesus answered, "Those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him. So Jesus grabbed the towel, he grabbed the basin, he grabbed the foot washing stuff, the lowest servant's job, and said, "This is what I'm going to do for you. This is what life in the kingdom of God looks like. The way you serve others is a hallmark characteristic of your life in my kingdom." then there's Peter. Good old Peter, right? He's always good for a story. Probably should have written a book called Adventures in Missing the Point. And I think it's why and I'm guessing I'm not the only one, several of us here like him so much. We're sort of dense like Peter a lot of the times. If foot washing is getting closer to Jesus, then don't just wash my feet, but wash all of me. Peter essentially says, Jesus, if this is what it takes to get close to you, then go ahead and give me a sponge bath. Adventures in missing the point. But as we'll see later, Peter's eyes are on himself and not on Jesus. True, genuine service is never about what we can get or what we can gain from it. Peter was like, then give me more, give me more. That's not the way we define living in God's kingdom. Instead, it's how we help someone else. So let's look at our church for a minute. We have, within our church, a fairly easy commitment level for people who want to be members. Most churches, I've never been a part of a church that didn't make it fairly easy. We baptize you. You go through this class starting next week. You get baptized on Easter Sunday. You're a member. And then we sort of give you a list of things that we would like for you to do. Come to church, support a ministry, tithe, vote at our congregational meeting, etc. Fairly easy stuff. You can mark a check on a paper. But we don't really do anything to support that list of requirements. We don't keep track and say, now who voted and who didn't. And if you didn't vote, you're no longer a member. We ask you to tithe, but we don't keep track of who is tithing to say, well, you only gave us 9% of your salary last year, you're no longer a member. At least from that standpoint, your membership stands secure in Garden Park. And truth be told, I only know of one church that actually does anything about it. And they take it seriously enough that if you call yourself a member and don't tithe, they kick you out of membership. Members in their church tithe. You want to be a member, that's a good, responsible sign. If you're not a member, that's fine. But one of the best ways to do that is to start tithing. I'm going to guess most of us here probably wouldn't feel very comfortable if we started to enforce that. If we looked at who gave and what they gave and calculated out, okay, is that 10%? No, they're not making the grade. Most of us here are going to suddenly become a bit uneasy. And that would definitely do something to the numbers of our membership in our church. And while tithing is a good and godly thing to do, something that I think it's important for people of faith to participate in, our symbol, our sign, our marker of the kingdom of God is not the dollar sign. So we don't keep track of that. Our symbol is the basin and the towel. So let's talk about membership, briefly, in Garden Park from another perspective. The idea of service. What if we started requiring, you want to be a member at Garden Park, here's what you have to do. You have to serve, you have to sacrifice your time to be a part of Garden Park. How many of us could be considered members if we required, that is, if we made mandatory 1 hour of service a week to the church? 1 hour a week. If you don't volunteer, you're going to get a warning. And after enough warnings pile up, we're going to suspend your membership until you start serving again. After 6 months, sorry, we don't want more apologies, we want active service. 1 hour a week. If you're wondering, there are 168 hours in every single week. So we are asking you to give up 1/168th of your time for Garden Park, or roughly 0.6%. That's easy to do. Most of our ministries are an hour. You can volunteer at 1 skip a week and meet that. So 1 hour is a little bit easy. And you guys like a good challenge, so let's up the number a little bit. What about 5 hours? How many are comfortable giving up 5 hours out of 168? 3% of your time to help the church. If we required 5 hours of service a week, how many still think they would be members? You don't have to raise your hand. But think about it. If we required 5 hours a week, 3% of your time, you can do whatever you want with 97% of your time, and we won't say a word. We just ask for 3%. How many of you would still be members? What about 10 hours? Roughly 6% of your time every single week. Well, now maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves, so let's start with 10 hours a month. There are 730 hours every single month. How many of you can give up 10 hours a month to help the church? 1.3% of your time. You can have 720 hours all to yourself. We ask for 10. Now, let's back up, because my goal isn't to make you feel guilty. It's not to shame you into service. We want genuine, honest outflow. We think it's an important characteristic to serve, but we're not trying to guilt you into doing it. My point is simply to say I think we've missed something with the symbolism of Christianity. See, Jesus in John 13 teaches us that we are to define ourselves by service to one another. Let's continue where we left off. Verse 12, when he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Do you understand what I have done for you? He asked them. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. And now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set an example for you that you should do as I have. Very truly, I tell you, servants are not greater than their master, nor messengers greater than the one who sent them. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. Jesus gives us an example. He sets before us what life in the kingdom looks like. And then that ending to that particular story sequence, and you will be blessed if you do that. How many of you would consider yourselves blessed? That you can look around you and say, yeah, I've got good things. I've got a nice life. It isn't perfect, no, but you know what, I think I'm blessed. Well, I think, at least to some degree, all of us could consider ourselves blessed. Is our life perfect? No. Do we have everything our heart could desire for? No. Do we have a large bank account with our name on it? Probably not. But given all circumstances and variables in life, we've got it pretty good. But service, when we define it that way, what we have based out of it is not what Jesus had in mind. Service for Jesus, when we define ourselves by kingly symbols, by his symbols, by the towel and the basin, automatically have to look outward. Because the low servant, the one who has to wash his feet, isn't saying, hey, I just washed your feet, what am I going to get from this? He washes his feet because he wants to serve someone else. So you're on your way home from work and you decide to stop and see someone in our church that's in the hospital, that's facing a hard time, that's health is failing them. And for you it might mean 15 minutes. But for them it's probably going to mean the world. Spring is coming and the grass is going to start to grow. So maybe one hot summer day, you know your neighbor is facing a hard time. Their marriage is on the rocks. And 30 minutes of labor to mow their lawn might just be what they need to rekindle their marriage. Fixing the single mom's flat tire costs you 20 minutes of your time, but allows her to get to work on time and feed her children. You see, service, when we define ourselves by God's standards, can never look at what are we going to get from this. That's not service. The common thread in each of these and what we learn from Jesus is that service looks towards those that we can bless. So you may never actually know how much you helped somebody until you can look back on the people and moments that were significant in your life that helped shape someone else. Suppose the great tragedy of every funeral is that when we stand up to eulogize someone and remember them, they probably don't know the many ways in which they shaped us. We often tend to keep those things to ourselves until at a funeral that's too late, and let me tell you about Grandma and how great she was. Let me tell you about Mom and the way she shaped me to be a person of faith. That genuine acts of service in the moment are probably very rarely known, because our eyes are consumed on someone else. What can we give them? How can we help them? How can we bless them? Jesus even warns us against this. Matthew chapter 6. I'll read it quickly. Be careful not to do your acts of righteousness in front of others, to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogue and on the streets, to be honored by others. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret, and then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. Service, the towel and the basin, is our symbol for the Christian faith. It's self-sacrificing. It's giving to others because we know how much God has blessed us. So let's be honest and go back to the example of membership in the church. Service sometimes is a bit hard to quantify and to put numbers to. At least if we're really not looking for it. Because it's easy, I think, to convince ourselves, yeah, I'm serving others all the time. But we can't explain how. So I also think it's just as easy that we serve without ever really doing so, precisely because we don't measure it. We assume we are because all good Christians serve, but we don't know how or when we last did. And all too often I think this is our great failure in faith. But it's also a line we have to walk carefully. Good service for others isn't ignoring or pretending that it doesn't happen. It's not humbly standing up and saying, shucks, it was nothing. Sometimes service hurts. So it's not, on the one hand, false humility. But it also isn't the focus on how good we are and how much we serve. If you confidently stand up and say, I can outserve others, we've instantly taken our priority off of service and onto ourselves. And I don't think we need to look any farther than Jesus, the giver of this symbol. He knew that he was consciously serving those around him. It wasn't a mystery to him, hey, am I serving my disciples? Am I helping this blind person? It didn't just sort of happen. It was a focused part of who he was. His life was defined by service. The miracles, the towel in the basin, and even the cross all point to Jesus, who intentionally did everything to serve you, to serve us. He was never unaware of his service. He just didn't care about taking the glory that came from it. So as we look, as Jesus gathers with his disciples, saying, my hour has come. We just spent 7 weeks looking at the miracles in Jesus, and the common thread was, my hour has not yet come. It's not my time. And Jesus now shifts to say, my time has come. The ultimate act of service that I can demonstrate is here. So with one last final teaching, disciples, followers, people who want to be with me, let me show you what life in the kingdom is like. Just as I have done for you. You have seen me for 3 years labor and toil and help those who need it. Your life should look the same. Our actions must be similar to Jesus. Willing to give and serve at a moment's notice without the need to be desired or praised or glorified or sometimes even noticed. So here's your final exercise for the day. Take notice this week. Who are you serving and how? Who are you being a blessing to? Remember, it's okay to notice it, just don't brag about it. So write down 3 people that you can give 1 hour of your time to this week. 1 hour out of this entire week to 3 people, you're giving up less than 1% of your entire week. But commit to giving them something of your time. Commit to serving them, whatever it is that they need. Man, they've been asking for help for a long time, and I've just been putting it off. Because I don't want to return that phone call. Or God's been calling me to call this person and check in and see how they're doing, but man, I know they're going to want to talk on the phone forever. But that service to them may change their entire outlook. We're getting ready. We're starting this year to take our 5th Sundays, and there are 4 this year, to be acts of service in our community. Because I think our symbol needs to be to a neighborhood that needs it. That we are the serving church. We're the giving church. I heard this week from members of Heidi's family that when they gathered for the funeral, they said, hey, we didn't even know this church was here. We've been on the same block for 60 years. We didn't just pop up overnight. But for them, what was going to speak to them is the fact that our church opened its doors and helped serve them in a time of need. We aren't defined by the swoosh on our shoes that makes us run faster, by the hammer and sickle, by the golden arches, or by a bald eagle. We instead are defined by the towel in the basin. Just as I have done for you, Jesus said, go and do for someone else. A call to serve our friends, our families, our neighbors, our community. To be known as the service church. I may not know much about God, but that church over there, they sure do a good job of representing Him. May we be known, may we be seen, may we be defined as people that kneel at the feet of those who need our help. And serve them. Then we will truly be blessed. Let's pray.